Welcome. I'm going to teach you guys how to make some swords. The style I'm going to do this class in is kind of a little more free flowing, so Bob Ross esque sword building here. Uh, I want to make sure people understand that this is not the only way to make a sword. I'm going to show you how I like to make swords, and I'm going to try to leave it open that like these are steps that are necessary to make it so your sword is legal, but this is not the only way to do it. This is just what I like to do, and if you'd like to take what I do, feel free. So, I got a couple different materials to use to make a weapon. I've got pool noodle, and this is not going to be for the blade. This is like kind of trash foam that I will be using to make like rattle stoppers and various parts of like the internal machinations of the blade, and then some things to do with uh, the pommel. I'll be using pool noodle a lot for the pommel. This is the actual foam for the blade. I got this from Lanky, from Sir Sean Demonsky. And this is stuff that I get from the States. And I think people are calling it super noodle. Because it looks a lot like pool noodle, but is actually thick enough to be a blade because the pool noodle company sucks and they made them smaller. I'm sure they were directly thinking of amp garters when they did that. Next, I've got what I'm using for cores. I like to use graphite golf club shafts and kite spar. If you want to get real cheap graphite golf club shafts, go to like all kinds of different like like Salvation Army and other thrift stores, and you go to back with in like those random buckets where all the sports nonsense is. There will be golf club shafts there. Just check and look on them. It'll say somewhere around like this part of the handle what it's made of, and it says right here graphite matrix. Don't know what the matrix part means at all, but it's graphite, and that's what you need. Metal ones, good luck sawing through that, honestly, because the first step you're gonna do is getting the head off. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna saw graphite in this enclosed space. Psych! Look at this. I got a second one, and it doesn't have a head on it. Wow! The magic of pre-preparing for a class. So, each I'm getting a little bit of feedback from your mic. If you
Oh,
would like
sorry
to,
about that. I'll
no
uh,
worries,
I'll
no
mute
worries.
myself.
Appreciate it, appreciate it. So once we have our head taken off of our blade, this one already has a handle on it. I will be talking about handles later, but for now we're just going to focus on the blade, so that won't be necessary. We're going to do a couple of things. First, you're going to ask yourself, what weapon do I actually want to make? Because swords fall into multiple categories in Amguard. Swords is going to be a broad term here, because you could have a weapon that is like a two-hand. I'm going to say sword is basically anything you wield two-handed, close together. So like you're not using a massive pole arm, like you have not hit the great weapon category yet. So basically anything a long sword and down. So the first thing you're gonna have to ask yourself is what size of weapon am I actually making here? Because within the rules of play, you actually have to have measurements for this sort of thing. We need to do math, and there's too many of us in this community who are gay to do that well. So get a measuring tape. You're not going to be able to guess. So if I want to make short swords, what size of short sword do I want? 36 is the maximum. A lot of people like using 36. Do I want something a little shorter? 34, 32, 30? Do I want to get closer to a dagger? Like I've got even got here. Let me show you. I've got swords sitting in the background, so I can give examples. Look at this. Oh no, my feet. You didn't pay for that. You didn't see those. Okay, so we've got this little guy here. It fits in my camera view, which means that it is like probably like 24, 25 inches. Like this is absolutely tiny as far as weapons go. But you can make literally whatever you want to. The only thing that's limiting you is safety rules and your creativity. So right now I'm going to be teaching how to make omni blades, but I've also made flat blades and other weapons of that nature in the past. So those things will require slightly different techniques, but similar principles. Um, this blade here is kitted to be 34 inches in total, so that's why you can't see all of it at once, unfortunately. The camera setup is the best I could do with the space I had available. So what I want to do is I want to be able to get enough blade to handle ratio. There are specific rules about that in the actual rule book. So read up and make sure that you're not about to make your weapon illegal by having a handle that's too long and a blade that's too short. It varies depending on which size of blade you're doing and which category you fall in. The rules for the long swords are slightly different than the rules for short swords and the rules for daggers. Then what you're going to do is you've got to cut the main section of your blade. So the easiest way for me to do this is to use like, if I didn't have a handle, I would mark on my core in some fashion, usually with like either a marker, or I'll take a knife and score it, and then I'll line my blade up with the edge of where I want it to end and the very top. And you might be like, well, your core's going to be sticking out. We're going to make a tip. So you'll be fine if you don't have, if you're not, if you don't have a cover on it immediately, if you don't leave some compensation. So I'm going to score that a little bit with a knife. You might be like, why are you using a steak knife? It's serrated. Way easier to cut foam with serrated blades. Everybody loves using, what do they call it? X-Acto knives. X-Acto knives, in my opinion, trash for cutting foam. Absolute garbage. But whatever works for you. So we're going to cut this. And boom, bam, pow. We're going to slide it on and see if we've actually got the right length, or if I have, messed up how my measurement looks. And what should happen, what you should have here, is once your blade is all the way down, let's see if you can see. Yeah, you've got this kind of flush top here where the edge of your pool noodle, or the edge of your blade, is exactly at the same level. It's flat, flush with the core inside of it. Now, I'm going to take the blade off again, and the reason for that is right now my blade kind of spins pretty easily. It's not secure. And so we need to stop that from happening, because if we leave it, there's going to be a rattle in our sword. And first of all, it sounds annoying when you're swinging a sword and it's rattling. And second of all, it will actually wear your blade out way, 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 way faster. So we're going to use something called a rattle stopper. I'm going to teach you how to make those real quick. This is why we have our trash foam for stuff like this. So to make a rattle stopper, what I do, that's foam. Ooh, should get this close to the mic, do some ASMR? Probably not. We're going to use tape later. I hate the way tape sounds. We're going to do, you don't need to be like super precise about it. You just literally need a little chunk of foam. I like taking little wedges like this, like cutting little wedge guys. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go along your blade at intervals. I like to rotate it. So I'm going to put like one here, and then I'll have another one that's like down here, and then another one that's like down here. Maybe about here. I need a taper, so you want to leave a couple of inches at the very bottom where you don't have any rattle stoppers, but that's because we're going to secure that with another method later. So we're going to secure this to the blade now, and we're going to use literally the most important tool in any blade crafter's arsenal: tape. Specifically, packaging tape. I like to find stuff that's as thin as possible. That's because I really like making super, super, super light swords. So the lighter my materials are, the lighter my sword will get. So we're going to take some tape. We're going to take our rattle stopper. We're going to put it on our tape, kind of like this. See if you can see. Yeah, there you go. It's just stuck there. And we're going to secure it by getting our tape down on one side. And we're going to pull, like with significant force, to get this down and more flat. It does not need to stick up very much. It just needs to stick up enough that you can get your blade over it and have it create pressure with it so that your blade won't rattle around. So I could sit here and show you how to make a ton of these, but that would take a little bit of time. And guess what? I don't think that's complicated. But if you have questions, if you need things to be reiterated, please let me know. Also, if you have questions you'd like to type. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Fubart. I see you. You posted all the all the rules around each of the different sizes of weapon. Much appreciated. Yeah. So for daggers, you have to have it needs to be between 10 inches and 18 inches in length. It must have 10 inches of strike legal padding, which is kind of funny because that means you could basically make a dagger that has almost no handle. Short swords may stab and slash between 18 inches and 36 inches is qualified as a short sword, basically where a dagger ends. At least 2/3 of its length must be strike legal. Allow for 1/3 of its length to be substituted for allows for 1/3 of its length to be substituted for heavy padding. Um, Long swords over 36 inches to a maximum of 48 inches, and at least 2/3 of its length must be padded, similar to a short sword in that regard. If used to slash, at least 2/3 of its length must be strike legal padding, and allows for 1/3 of its length to be substituted for heavy padding, which means that you can make a long sword that can stab. It can only be used for stabbing. If you uh, want to cover 2/3 of it in padding, but only make some of it strike legal padding, but then you can only stab people. They're fun to use though. I love making stab only longswords. So, speaking of longswords, I think I have one here that actually has rattle stoppers finished. So, once you finish your rattle stoppers, you want to then put your blade back over those rattle stoppers. So this is one I have that has the rattle stoppers done. And then we're going to start taping the blade. Taping the blade to what? To nothing, actually. We're going to be effectively coating it in a layer of packaging tape for two reasons. One, you're going to effectively, you're going to help waterproof your blade. It's not perfect. It's not an absolute seal against water, but it does prevent some water damage to do what I'm about to show you. Um, uh, but it also, when you're using it, the way it wears is slightly different. The most dangerous type of wear in a sword, in my opinion, is when you actually have splits in the foam. When you have something like, see, this is trash foam, so I can do whatever I want to it. If you get something like this happening, where there's an actual rip in the middle of your foam, because this will continue to split, and then suddenly you have this whole section where you could hit somebody and they will absolutely feel a core run into them. If you have tape over this, if your blade does split, it will be safer to use. It'll be safer to use until you can go and actually check your weapons and find that it's there. Um, you're less likely to hurt someone while this is being kind of held together by tape. But this is also why it's very important that you check your weapons every time you play, because if you don't check them, you might think your weapon is legal when it is not, and it is becoming more and more unsafe. So this will make it safer while it is starting to deteriorate, but check your weapons and make sure they're legal always. Always do that, kids. So, uh, we'll cover the blade tape. I'm only going to show you how to do like one side of this. It's not super relevant that I show you what all of it looks like. But basically, my method for this, let me make sure I can get everything I need to in frame here, is I'm going to start at the tip of my blade with my packaging tape. I'm going to hold it there, one finger. I'm going to run this all the way down to the base. Once I have the length I need, I'm going to take it away. So this is about how long I need all my strips to be for my long sword. Create a break in the tape. Re-secure it to the sword. And then I want you to see the bottom of this too, so we'll move it this way. There you go. So we're going to secure it on the top and bottom. We're going to try and keep it as straight as possible. And then there's going to be two sides of this that are kind of like flapped up. It's hard to see on camera. But the tape isn't secure yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put both of my thumbs kind of near the middle, or two fingers near the middle, and each and along the whole way down. Let's see if I can get you an angle that doesn't suck here. I'm going to just kind of gently push it. And the reason I'm doing this is that it's going to avoid making creases in the tape. Because you might not think of it. Well, two reasons I do this. First, looks ugly. It looks ugly to have creases in your swords. And you're like, well, you're going to put a cover on it. Fair enough. If the creases are big enough, though, you can still see them through the covers. And also, like, you'll know they're there. You made it. You know the creases are there. Just use your thumbs and push it down gently. Secure the tape, avoid creases, and have a happy life. Um, so you're gonna do this for every side. So you see where it's all shiny, not so shiny. That's where the tape isn't. So you want to basically make it so your whole sword is gonna get covered like this. So the next section I do would be right here, slightly connected to this section, and go all the way around until the whole blade is covered. Once that step is completed, we're gonna do something called torquing. Uh, the bottom of your blade over this way. What I do, if you can see already, I've done this step ahead of time, uh, is I've sliced just upwards on an angle multiple times at the base of the blade. And the reason for that is I want to secure the bottom of my blade. I want to secure this to the handle and kind of make it so there's a gradual. Sorry, one sec, guys. Okay. There's kind of a taper into your blade. It gives you a place to kind of put your thumb when you're up high on your sword, and it also doesn't look so boxy. Because like having the blade just kind of stick out here is ugly, in my opinion. And it gives you another point to secure your blade to the handle, which is always important. You don't want them flying off and hitting people. So what you're gonna do? Let's see if I can show you this technique. You're gonna secure your tape to the blade right where my thumb is, and you're gonna just basically pull and tighten the foam to the blade as much as you can while going around it multiple times. So this could be a little thicker, but you're effectively aiming to have a smooth, even taper all the way up to where the cuts you've made end. It doesn't need to be that large, only about 1.5 inches uh, cut to make the taper effective. And then after this, you've got this nice gradual incline to your blade. I'll give you a good look at it in a second. And this will help keep your blade from coming off when you're swinging it at people. So this part might just look a little ugly because there's a ton of tape there, but I assure you it will look a lot nicer once you cover it. So once you do this, we get to a little bit more of the like. None of this stuff is all that special, all that important looking. It's just getting the meat and potatoes of your blade out of the way. This is where things can start to get a little creative. So when I do this, when I make my tips, I like to grab Puzzlement, and I forgot to bring it with me. Um, so if you give me 1 second, I'll grab some. I know exactly where it is. All right, I'm back. So when making tips, it's very important that you make them as safe as possible because stabbing people is probably the most dangerous form of attacking someone with a sword. Uh, if your core goes through your sword. The other ones, it's like you kind of hit them with a really, really hard stick, and that sucks. Stabbing them, you you sawed, you basically just sawed a graphite pole before you covered it in foam. So stabbing someone with that, with any real amount of force, is going to suck. So what you want to do is you want to take a circle of this puzzle mat, about the same size as your blade, so I could just use the foam that I use for my blade, and then effectively just kind of like trace around it so that you know how big it's going to be. And then when you cut it out, you can put that on top of your blade, secure it, and then you have a nice base to put the rest of your tip on. You really want to have this puzzle mat there so the core doesn't go through, but rest assured, puzzle mat is not a forgiving foam. It's very dense. So I would not suggest making your tips out of puzzle mat. It's not a good way to go. People are not going to appreciate being stabbed by it. I will tell you that for free. So once you got your circle cut out, or whatever shape your tip is, I don't know. I won't judge. You're going to put it on top, make sure it looks about right size, and I think we did an okay job. It doesn't need to be perfectly circular. You just don't want to have it like so out there, so off that your the rest of your blade is going to suffer for construction, or you'll have like weird lumpy bits sticking out. That's not so good. So then we're going to secure it to the top. And the way I usually do this is with with like a cross section of tape, so two pieces of tape that kind of go over it. You don't need to go too crazy with it. We have more things to put on over top of it. There will be more tape. I promise you. When building a sword, there is always. So what it'll look like, because I'm kind of doing this off camera, you'll have one going this way, and then, oh man, the challenge of finding your seam in the packaging tape. And then you'll have another section going this way. So you've got two now, and that'll hold this in place. So next we're going to actually build our tip. And this is where our trash foam comes in really handy, our pool noodle, because pool noodle might not be legal for me to use as the entirety of the blade, but it's actually very, very nice to use for tips because it is soft. And it's actually significantly softer than the super noodle I'm using for the base of the blade, which means that when I stab someone with this, they're going to have a nice little cushion instead of getting hit with the force of 1,000 suns that would be your puzzle mat tip. Currently, this is technically a legal tip, but it's not fun, and that's what we're all here for. Either that or getting Warlord. So, the way you want to do this, I'm going to cut a little cross section out of this pool noodle that is the same kind of width as my tip. So, if I mark it, it's right about here. So then I make a cut. And then we're going to take the spoon noodle, and each of these little cross sections makes two tips. How convenient. We're going to cut it in half this way. So get to about the middle. It doesn't need to be precise. We're going to be torquing all this stuff down anyways. And you have this little cap that's going to go on top. Now, in its current form, this is going to be pretty ugly because you got these like corners that are going to be sticking out. And if you don't do this, you can still torque it down and make it kind of flush to make your blade look a little nicer. But I like to just come in here and take little sections like this off at the corners so that when I get to taping this on top, it looks a little nicer. So now you've got like, oh, I forgot one. Now you've got this kind of octagonal guy, like this little corner guy going on here. And that will be much nicer when you get it on top. This step's a little bit extra. You don't have to do this. I like to do it. I don't know, force a habit at this point. Plus, I think I don't know if it actually makes it look nicer. I just think it does. So I'm gonna take these little guys, two little wedges like we use for the rattle stoppers, and I'm actually gonna put them inside of it like this, inside of the groove in the middle from where we cut it in half. I'm gonna take one piece of tape. Hey, Lanky, how's it going?
I'm just trying to figure this thing out. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, shut
Right
that off.
now, I'm just showing people how I make the tips of my sword. Uh, so you're welcome to join and see how I do
Absolutely.
things.
I'm sorry I'm late.
No worries, no worries.
Look
Well,
at this. You're doing it all alone.
so you caught me at the portion of this where I'm making the tips nicer when I stab people. Because we've already put puzzle mat on it. Technically, this is legal, but no one's ever going to have a fun time getting hit by this. No one's going to enjoy that. So, what I've done is I've taken a small section of pool noodle and I've cut it to be the same kind of width as my tip. And I've taken the little corners off of it here so that it'll taper better when I torque it down. Then I put these little guys in here so it doesn't get compressed flat. None of that's super necessary, but I just think it looks nicer when it's done. So now I'm going to secure this in a similar fashion to what I did earlier with the puzzle mat. I'm going to take some lengths of my tape and I'm going to make sure this tip stays on top. This one, instead of doing just a cross section with 2 pieces of tape, I'm going to use 4 pieces of tape so that we kind of get the entire thing covered with packaging tape. For similar reasons to why we cover the whole blade with packaging tape. It makes it a little more waterproof. It makes it so that if there is an actual split in your foam, it's held together a little nicer so it doesn't immediately become dangerous. It will still be technically illegal, so you will have to check your weapons frequently and make sure that you're not hitting someone with an illegal blade. But at least you won't be hitting hitting somebody with a sword that will actually do physical harm yet. It'll just prevent a little bit of that more dangerous, scary wear and tear. So, once you secure all of your tape, it should look a little like this. You have the entire thing coated in a layer of packaging tape around the tip, and you now have this nice kind of hard foam here to prevent your core from going through your tip, and then you have this soft foam here to make sure that nobody gets mad at you for bruising their ribs. So once you're at this point, your blade is mostly finished. Oh, we have people joining. I should probably we'll do a quick recap of where we're at. So far we have put a blade on our sword by measuring some things and making sure that we're all within the rules of play. And then we've coated it in packaging tape. We've torqued down the bottom of our sword to make sure it's secure here and doesn't rattle, doesn't move anywhere. And then we've put a tip on the sword. So to put the tip on the sword, we've used some puzzle mat to prevent your tip from going through your sword and hurting your opponents. And then we've taken that puzzle mat and covered it with some pool noodle to make sure that you don't bruise the ribs with the harder uh, puzzle mat tip. So we're gonna move on to handles at this point because they're very neat. I think handles are where swords really actually start to get interesting because up until handles, it's all kind of like just making sure you have some type of blade. There are lots of different types of handles, lots of different ways to do them. I think this is where you get to show off your own personal creativity. I'm just going to show you a couple of different ways to do things. So, some people really like the handles that come with golf club shafts because that's for this sword we're using a golf club shaft core. Uh, for those who want to go get golf club shafts, make sure they're graphite. It will say on the handle it'll say on the actual shaft somewhere around here that it's made of graphite. This one, I think it says like carbon matrix or something, or graphite matrix. So you'll know in some sort of terms that it's made of graphite. Uh, Plus, you can figure it out pretty quickly when you try to saw through it. And if sparks don't fly, it's probably not metal. Uh, then you've got uh, all different types of ways you can do things. There are these rubber handles that come with them. I personally don't like these very much. They're decent for grip, but they weigh a ton. And they're not really thick enough for me. But I know lots of people who just leave them on and then build pommels over the top of them, and they're completely satisfied with that. So, kind of to each their own. This handle was made with a rope wrap, which I use macrame cord for, and I will actually be giving you a demonstration on how to do that. This one was made also with macrame cord, but down each side of the blade, I took pencils and I cut them in half and then laid them across, so it makes kind of a wider handle that kind of makes your sword a little fatter across and held kind of more one way. I'm thinking about turning this blade into a flat blade to kind of go with that theme there. And then there are like two main objectives in my mind to building any handle. The two objectives you should be looking to meet are: is it comfortable to hold in your hand, and have you counterweighted your blade? You want your sword to have to have balance. You want it to be uh, comfortable to both hold and also to swing. Um, if your balance point is too far towards the head, you're not gonna like towards the tip of your sword. You're not gonna have as much control over that tip, and it's gonna feel heavier than it actually is because all of this weight is at the very top. Some materials I'd suggest to give your sword some weight would be some duct tape, or I've used in my pommels. I've put like sand in it before, or like uh, anything heavier. Really, people used to have hollow cores and use batteries. I would not suggest that. That that whole style of building swords has kind of gone by the wayside. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this golf club shaft that I've got here, and I'm going to show you what I do with them to get rid of this handle that I don't like very much. First, it's kind of annoying, but you have to like kind of cut it away. So little by little, I put cuts in it and peel it off. They secured these like super duper well, depending on the brand. So I'm hoping that this one kind of sucks, so that I could just kind of go all the way down it in one motion here instead of wasting all of your time. By the way, if you have questions, I'm trying to do this. I've only got one monitor, so I want to make sure I'm showing you things properly. Yeah, Fubart also gave a good example of one of the handles he's made. Very nice. Feel free to share your sword stuff in the Adventure Academy Classroom 2 text chat, please. That'd be nice. We're kind of doing a think of this as a little more free form. I want to show you how I do things, but I also want like everybody to know that at the end of the day, it's your sword. It's for your comfort. So that's why like I hate these handles that I'm taking off right now. But if you like them, then I have absolutely no authority to tell you not to use them. Only thing I can say is make your swords legal. Just make them safe. Once they're safe, I'm happy. I don't need much more from you than that. But if you see something I do that you like, feel free to take that for your own. I think we all get better by sharing the things that we do well. So eventually I'll get this off. But once I do, we'll start building a handle for this. A couple of important things to keep in mind when you're building a sword. Uh, you want to effectively prevent this is a little bit of a recap for some of the people who have already been here, but for the people who have joined more recently, you want to prevent rattles at all costs. If your sword is rattling, that means there's going to be extra wear internally, and it will blow out faster. Um, when you're checking your swords, make sure to pay special attention to the areas where the sword actually hits things. Most of your blade, like for usual combat, the majority of the blade uh, isn't actually going to be hitting stuff. So I would say that like this top third ish of your blade is the most important for you to check consistently. So absolutely don't skimp when you're checking that. And if you ever end up being in a position where you're checking other people's weapons, be sure that you check them. But please don't dig your thumbs into people's swords. It's not very nice. So now we're gonna get to building a handle. Uh, First things first, make sure your handle isn't too long. Uh, Fubart has very kindly posted in the text chat the rules around the construction of short swords, daggers, and long swords. So how much foam they need to have, how much of it needs to be strike legal padding, and so on and so forth. So by following those rules, you can figure out how long your handle can be for your sword. Uh, a measuring tape is a very good investment if you're interested in making swords, because eyeballing it is risky, because that means you can show up at events and have all your swords legalized and be very sad about it. So I like to start my handles with the pommel so I have somewhere to work from. So what we're going to do, the pommel doesn't have to meet the same requirements that the blade does, because obviously I'm not trying to hit anybody with the pommel. It just needs to be 2 inches across. So I use pool noodle a lot for the pommels. And we're basically just going to make um, the the base of a sword blade to start with anyways. So I'm going to take this little piece of pool noodle. I'm going to shave the side of it so it's tapered, kind of like this. So it's fatter on this side than it is on this side. And we're going to do this on all 4 sides. For this sword, there's you can get kind of creative, a little imaginative with it. For this long sword I've made here, I only did it on 3 sides, and it kind of came out with this. Let's see if I can give it a more hooked look, more hooked feeling, so it feels nicer to grip it on this side, just because I wanted to do kind of a Count Dooku thing with it. Uh, and I kind of like that style, but it's really up to you. The only thing you're really limited by is making the weapon safe. Once it's safe, you're good to do basically whatever you want with it. We're gonna take some of this excess foam that we've cut off, because right now if I try to slide this pommel end on, it's just gonna like it's going nowhere. Like it's going everywhere. It's not gonna stay at the base. So we're basically going to take this foam and torque it down to build a buffer so that my pommel will actually meet some resistance and stay at the bottom of my sword. Exactly. Measure twice, cut once. Fubard, that is excellent, excellent advice. Make sure that what you're doing, that you have things the size you want them. Also, bear in mind, if you want to make tips in the style that I make them, the core of the sword that I made, um, like you have to think that that will add length. Like the pommel, if you have some buffer for the base of your core and the tip of your sword, um, you're going to be adding like a good 2.5 inches to every sword you make with just foam coming off of the ends of it. So if you want to make a 36-inch sword, you need to have something like a 34-inch core or a 33-inch core, uh, to account for the fact that you're going to have foam running up most of it. Well, your foam adding to the tip and base of it. So I'm just going to take this first little piece. We'll see if I can get a better angle here. I still have the head on this golf club shaft, but that's because I did not want to saw graphite in a closed environment, and I did want to show you what it looked like before it got messed with. So this still likely won't be enough to hold it in place. Maybe it will be. Ah, yeah, it is. It's just enough to secure this. It doesn't need to be tight yet. We're going to be putting tape on it. So for now, this will do. So now that we have this here, I wish I had. I'm sorry for the camera angle and everything you guys are getting. I'm making the most of what I've kind of got with me here. Once you have this secured, you want to actually get tape over it. Look, if it is foam on a sword, you want to have a layer of tape on it. In my opinion, it just makes it more resistant to the weather. It makes it easier. It makes it like safer as well. And it's just better to have tape on things. Plus, for your handles, this adds a little bit of weight. And actually, one of the things that I'll do a lot with my pommels is once I'm finished like making the handle and everything, is I'm gonna go back and do like 2 coats of tape on this to add more weight. And depending on how much weight I think I'll need, I might use like duct tape, like really heavy stuff, to add weight to my blade to get my balance where I want it. Now, balance for a sword is a little bit subjective. Personally, for me, I like the balance for my sword to be about the middle, like shifted closer to the handle, but about the middle of the blade. Some people like it closer to the tip. Some people like it closer to their hands. That is going to be on you. That's going to be a comfort thing that you figure out for yourself. I cannot decide how you like a sword to be balanced, but I can tell you methods to help you out. Fundamentally, the more materials you use to make something, the heavier it will be. So if you're going for a tip heavy, like closer to the tip, balanced sword, you want to be very minimalistic with how you make your handles. If you want your balance closer to your handle, you really want it to be heavier in your handle. And sometimes that means you need to go and grab heavier materials because you would have just too much bulk if you try to do it with lighter, if you try to make your handle with lighter materials. So for this pommel, I'm just going to do it very basic. What we did at the tip, where we took our half piece, we've done again. We're going to put this here and we're going to secure it. This one can be torqued a lot harder because we're well over the 2-inch margin here. So you can be a little more aggressive with this than I would be for our tip. Just because with the tip, you want there to be a little extra cushion. We want to be courteous to our fellow combatants. But for the pommel, really, like, this is just to prevent it from going directly to someone's eyeball. And the number of times that I have actually ended up hitting someone with a pommel in this game, in all, geez, what is it now, like 9 years I've played, is like it's so few I cannot actually remember a time it's happened. So it might actually be 0. So long as you know where your sword is and what you're doing, the odds that this will be relevant are very few and far between. But it's still good for it to be there. Plus, it looks cooler if it's there, and we're all about things looking cool. I gotta keep going back sometimes to check. Yeah, pipe cutters work well for cutting graphite and fiberglass without making dust into the air. Yeah, for me, I like using the saw. I found that it makes a very clean cut. But if you're going to use a saw to cut graphite without, it'll throw some dust up. The 2 things you'll want to do is ideally do it outside. Don't do it inside. And secondly, if you have it, well, we all kind of have them now. But if you have masks like industrial masks, use those. If not, the masks we have for COVID work great for avoiding getting graphite dust. Yeah. Hello, new people. You're a little late to the party, so we're working on handles right now. But if you'd like to ask any questions, I can kind of address them while we're in the building phase of things. I'm just about to show what a pommel will look like once you've put some tape over the top of it to cover it and torque it down. If
Handles
you,
for swords?
yes, handles for swords.
Okay.
If you want to post your questions in the Adventure Academy Classroom 2 text chat, I'm going back and forth between that and working on this. So, this is kind of where we're at for our pommel portion. So, we've added 4 more strips of tape, like with the tip, and pulled it so that this kind of turns into a knob at the bottom. It's a lot harder than our tip is now, so this could be actually gripped without it being like super squishy. Like if I was going to just grab a piece of pool noodle, this will just get crushed. This has been coated and covered, so this will have a little more resistance. And if you push on it, make sure you don't feel the core through the bottom. This is all legal. This is all safe. You're good to go on this account. The only reason you should be like you might want to address this again is to either I like covering my pommels in hockey tape because I think the orange is a little out there. Um, but the only 2 reasons I would address this again is to add hockey tape to cover it, or if I needed to add weight to balance my sword, I would do a layer of duct tape or something to add weight here. So for this handle, I'm just going to do a rope wrap. Uh, for those of you joining, welcome. Uh, we're just working on the handles for swords right now. If you have any questions, the Adventure Academy Classroom 2 post. What is my handle made of? So the core of my weapon is made of graphite. I use golf club shafts. You can find those at basically any thrift store. If you go to the back where all the like random sporting nonsense is, there's typically a bunch of really cheap golf clubs. Um, and the way to tell they're graphite, they will actually very kindly say on the handle. Let's see if I could kind of show you. You won't be able to read the lettering, I don't think, but like right in here, there's a bunch of letters, like there's a bunch of words on it, like Tour 5.0 and all this nonsense. Really, what you're looking for is the word graphite. This says graphite matrix. The matrix portion not relevant. Just the fact that it's graphite is good enough. The handle we are about to make, though, is going to be made out of macrame. So this is going to be a rope wrap handle. Now you can get kind of funky with handles. I'll give you some examples of swords I've already been working on. So this is also a macrame wrap, but if you'll notice, it's a little oblong, and that's because I actually took pencils and I cut them in half and ran them up the side of the blade to give it more of an oblong feel to it. So it fits in your palm a little nicer. You can use foam. You can use really whatever you would like to make your handles kind of have their own texture. I actually, no, we'll do this technique. It doesn't take that long to show people. Um, I've used in the past to create like this effect of my blades, of my handles. I've done I've taken rope or taken literally rolled up hockey tape and ran it in a crisscross pattern to make that happen. So first things first, we're going to do our actual rope wrap. This isn't all that complicated. I'm going to start using hockey tape here because it's a little heavier, and I want that fabric tape feel on my handles. Not a big fan of slick tape for handles, especially when it's wet. I absolutely suggest using some form of fabric tape for your handles because if you're using something like if I was using packaging tape for my handles and it got wet, ooh, that would tremendously suck. It'd be a slip and slide, a sword slip and slide. Now, Lanky, you would know about this as well. Um, After using a sword with a hockey tape handle for long enough, eventually you basically wear through it. You wear like all of it out. Um, and after layers and layers of this, your sword like has like a skin feel to it. It's super crazy. but that's like years and years of use with that single blade. And it's kind of like I think it's the best texture to hold a sword, but you really just need to use it at that point. So what we're gonna do, I've taped down one small end of my cord here, and I'm going to still hold it, so I'm gonna pull the tape out of the way. But I'm going to apply pressure and just turn the sword while I give the, the rope some slack. So this is going to be very tight, and it's going to go all the way up as far as I want the handle to go. Now, posted in the Adventure Academy Classroom 2, our classroom text chat, uh, was so kindly by Mr. Fubart, are the rules to how much foam to handle ratio you can have. So this is just an example, so I'm not going to pay that much mind. But you're going to do this effect all the way up to the end. So it takes a little while, and a little bit of focus to maybe your hand will cramp a little bit by the end of it. But once you get through it, you'll have a blade that looks quite nice, and it'll buff it out a little bit. Depending on how thick you want your handles, you could do one layer of this, two layers of this. I've even seen some people do three layers in certain section of rope wrap. It kind of depends on the thickness of your cord and your own personal preference. I've said this for the other people who are here already, but I think handles are really the personality of your sword. The blade and everything, really for that, you're just trying to aim to make them safe and light and durable. You don't want them to rattle and break on you. But the handles are really where things get interesting because they're where the majority of your counterweight is coming from. They're kind of where like your individual grip is. So we're gonna stop this handle here, just so I'm not gonna waste all of your time today. Give that a little cut. We're still going to hold pressure. So after I cut it, I'm still holding my thumb here, so we're not losing the tension we've gathered. And then I let go of it, so we lose the tension we gathered. Tragic. And I should have prepared a piece of tape cut, but instead we're going to just kind of like make this work. So you can kind of do this in a number of ways. I like to keep the texture of this rope wrap I've made in place. I like it to still be there. So I only really use one layer of hockey tape over the whole thing, so you can still kind of like see the little bumps the handle makes. You can still feel them. Some people like to just effectively slick it out by using multiple layers of hockey tape. Um, I only do that if weight is involved. And right now, this is just a demonstration handle, so weight isn't super relevant. Okay. So now we've got this secure. This is kind of what you're looking at. And then if I wanted to do that X pattern I showed you a little earlier, yeah. So this is what I do. There's multiple different methods. Bafford, is that? Am I saying that right? I hope I'm saying that right. Multiple different methods you can use. The taping underneath it is a great idea as well. I prefer taping over it because, especially with like the macrame cord, lots of different materials get like super slick if they get wet. And in Canada, especially, we like there's snow in the winter, and I'm not about to stop fighting because it's winter. So my weapons are at some point going to get wet, and I really would rather have them in my hands than slip and sliding all over the place. So at this point, what I would do is I would cover this in one layer of hockey tape. I hope my camera will focus enough once I'm done this, so you can see that there are still little ridges in all of this. It would be nice for you to be able to see that. So once this is covered, if I want to do that like X pattern, yeah, you can kind of see that there are little ridges right across. That's nice. I could take my rope like this, and I basically just wrap it around, cut a piece, and then tape it down. So I get a length of it, maybe about there. If you want to, you can use different thicknesses of ropes. You've kind of got different like textures of things going on. Really, whatever works for you. And earlier, before people kind of show up, we were kind of hanging out and waiting. Ish and I were talking about our own sword making tech, and he mentioned a very unique way of making a handle. I've only seen it maybe twice in the time I play this game, and currently I'm at about 9 years of being involved in the Epgard community. Um, I've seen somebody who used uh, caulking to make their handle, and they basically made uh, a mold of their own hand. I thought that was incredibly unique and very interesting. So their grip was basically catered to their own hand. So truly, like you could do almost anything you want with the handle. You're not gonna hit anybody with it. So like you want to make it out of foam. You want to have a squishy handle. Nice. One of my favorite handles, actually, I didn't even like make anything about it. I went to a sporting goods store and I purchased the adhesive rubber grip handles they have for lacrosse players that they'll use on lacrosse sticks. And I just bought one of those, wrapped my sword with it, and then was on my way. I padded it a little bit underneath, otherwise it would have been too thin. But I am fantastically happy with how that sort of turned out. So once I've got this little pattern going on, once again, we're going to be securing this with the hockey tape and then coating it in a layer of it. This coating of tape, though, we don't have to like wrap everything. You can kind of just follow the pattern we've made, so that we don't end up with like weird lumpy nonsense. Personally, I like to try to keep things kind of sleek and kind of good. But again, once you like use something, once you wear on it, things will naturally kind of smooth out with pressure and time. So if you feel like you've made a mistake that you're not a fan of, or there's something about your sword that you don't like, beating crap out of it actually helps fix it a lot of the time. Funny enough. But yeah, feel free to type any questions you have about swords, or like post things you like about the swords you make as well. Like I'd love to discuss new tech and different tech. There's very few wrong ways to make a sword in my mind. I think the ways that you can make a sword wrong are you made it too heavy or you made it illegal. And I don't mean like you didn't balance it well. Like not balancing it well, I find is far more subjective than some people would like to admit. I know that I have a preference for my weight being closer to my handle, but some people don't like that as much, and that's absolutely their prerogative. Um, but swords that are too heavy are incredibly difficult to use. The other one is like I highly suggest being very picky about what materials you use for cores. I'm sure everyone here at some point or another has felt the difference between a sword made with kite spar and um, what's it called? Kite spar and graphite versus a sword made from PVC. And I am fairly certain that if you have felt that difference, you know that it is way more unwieldy to try and use something made out of PVC. They wobble, they're too heavy. The core is so thick it can't fit anything but the most like absolutely grotesque glue possible, or grotesque foam possible. So like you're not gonna have fun. Let me check on what's going on here. What do we got? one that doesn't mean safe. When I say too heavy, Corwin, I don't mean like uh swords in Amtgard in terms of like a competitive blade are effectively measured in ounces. I've held people's weapons before, swords that they've made that like weigh closer to like 3 or 4 pounds. Those like I don't care how strong you are, even if you had taken that to a real medieval battlefield, it wouldn't have been an effective way to make a weapon.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I was just mentioning it because got a lot of people that complain about my swords being too light.
No, I'm on the lighter sides of swords as things go. I prefer to have something close to a feather light. Like the fewer ounces I can put in a sword, the better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've been working with another guy in my kingdom, and we've gotten them down to about 4.5 ounces at this point now for a fully complete sword.
I love that. But some people like the 8 to 12 ounce range, and honestly, like that's a personal preference. It's personal preference at that point. Um, I think any sword under about like I think the heaviest you could probably make a sword and have it still like be within the realms of competitive for your average person would be around 16 or less ounces. I think once you start getting over that, it starts being like battle game and role play designated in my mind.
Agreed. What I've been working on lately is just trying to find cores that are lighter. Like for the tech that we've been working on for tournament sticks, it's if your core weighs more than 2 ounces, then it's no good. You got to find something lighter. And
Again, I think that's kind of a personal preference thing. I think like I
yeah,
know plenty of people who can find a heavier sword and swing it just as fast and just as accurately as I could with my feather lights. Um, but yeah, so
this is just based on one specific fight theory, and it's from a group that's down in where are we? Oh shit, I think it's Nebraska that they're in.
right,
That they're doing that theory. So I've been working with them on the technology.
nice.
I like
So
my scores to be about 6 personally.
why is my camera so unfocused right now? What are you doing? But yeah, in essence, those are the different aspects you want to focus on when building your sword. Just to recap, to start with, you want to make sure everything that you're doing is the right size. You don't want a blade that's too short, or your sword will be illegal. You don't want a blade that's too long, or you'll risk having it break on you and like flop over the tip, like flopping over your core and being pierced, which will also make it illegal. Um, After you've measured out your core, you then want to make sure that it doesn't rattle. So we put small little pieces of foam inside to make rattle stoppers. So when you hit it, it makes a nice pop sound and it doesn't jiggle around afterwards. Then you want to put some puzzle mat in the way of your tip just so you don't hurt anybody. So you don't hurt anybody with the core. Then you put foam over that so you don't hurt anybody with the puzzle mat. Secure your blade finally, and then build your handle however you wish. After that, find a balance point that's right for you. Let's see, do I have the room to show you? My balance point is right around there. That's where I like to have them for the most part. Um, and after that, get creative. Make your swords as fantastically and uniquely as you like. Um, Enjoy them very much. I think that I am just about out of time for today, but thank you for joining me. Uh, I know COVID is a bastard for all of this, and I would much rather be teaching you how to use your swords than how to build them. But in the future, I hope to see you all in person, and I hope you enjoy yourselves very, very much. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for doing the class, Garrett.
Thank you, Sundry.
Have a good day, everybody. Thank you.